You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I am your host, Ben Wallach. This is it, guys. Episode 50. I can't believe we made it. This is 50 episodes, almost a year of doing the podcast. It's absolutely crazy. Thanks for listening and helping me get here. Listeners, thank you. Thanks to your support and listening and telling me to keep going. It's been really amazing, honestly. You know, I started this podcast with lots of goals in mind. And I got to tell you, the number one thing, the thing that was just mind-blowing was how many amazing people I got to meet, how many connections I made all over the world, people I never thought I'd get to meet. And it's been such a privilege to meet them and schmooze with them and learn from them. So I've learned a ton doing this podcast. I've let my curiosity lead the way. And it's just been such a journey, and it's been so much fun. And, you know, even as my own work started to slow down with, the whole COVID-19 pandemic and everything that's been going on around the world. This podcast has given me something to keep my eye on and a goal to achieve no matter what every single week. And it hasn't always been easy to publish every single week. I've certainly had weeks where it's come close and life has been, life can be crazy sometimes, but somehow we've pulled through, and every single week for 50 weeks, there has been a new episode of Secret Sonics. So I'm super proud of it. I think it's a great show. I'm so happy I started it, and I hope you guys have been enjoying it too. So yeah, looking forward, I do want to make the show even better. And so I'm actually going to attach a survey to this show and for the next couple weeks in the show notes of this episode, and for the next couple weeks show notes, to try to make the show better. It's going to be a listener survey, and you can fill it out and let me know what you think about all those things in the questions there. And I'm going to try to even sweeten the deal even better, because I'm going to choose one person that fills out the survey in a raffle to win a 1 hour free production coaching call with me. And we could talk about anything you're struggling with now in production, or a specific production we could work on, or anything that you might need help with. But one person who fills out the survey will win a chance to have this conversation with me. And if that person doesn't want it, then we could pass it on to the next person on the list. But in any event, definitely check out the survey. It's attached to the show notes of this episode and will be for the next couple of episodes. In addition to that, there's one more resource I wanted to mention to you guys. Is on my website, I have a resources tab, and I have a free PDF called Simple Production Tips for Musicians. If you're interested, that's another way to help boost your production knowledge. As far as this episode goes, this episode is with Ebonie Smith, who is a music producer out of New York, and she also works at Atlantic Records. She is super cool and inspiring, and I really loved our conversation, and I learned a ton, so I think you will too. So without further ado, for episode number 50, the one and only Ebonie Smith. Here it is, guys. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Ebonie Smith. Forbes magazine 30 Under 30 nominee, Ebonie Smith is an award-winning music producer, audio engineer, and singer-songwriter based in New York City. Ebonie is also the founder and president of Gender Amplified, Incorporated, a nonprofit organization that celebrates and supports women and girls in music production. Ebonie holds a master's degree in music technology from New York University and an undergraduate degree from Barnard College, Columbia University. She currently works as an audio engineer and producer for Atlantic Records. It's an honor to have Ebonie on the show. So welcome to Secret Sonics, Ebonie. What a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad I can be here virtually. We don't have to try to brave the 6,000 miles of distance between you and myself.
It's like 2 meters plus 6,000
it's 6,000 miles
of social distancing.
Yeah, right. Social distancing on top of the actual real distance. So this is great. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So tell us a bit about how you got started getting involved in music production.
That's such a funny and intricate story. When people ask me about that in interviews, sometimes I don't know where to start. But if you want to ask me when my first instance of what recording was and that there was a such thing as recording and making records that goes all the way back to when I was probably 14. And I went to a recording shop that we had in our hometown called Strings and Things. And the first thing I always did as a piano player, I would go straight to the keyboard section. And this particular day, there were all these synthesizers there, all of these sequencers, these workstations. And the Roland clerk was there. He was like a sales tech. And he started to demo the Roland workstation for me, one of the newer ones. It was about $3,000 at the time. And I was utterly amazed. He was recreating songs from the radio with sounds in the keyboard. And that was just amazing to me. First of all, there was so much control that you could associate with that. But also was the idea that the keyboard can do more than play notes from a piano or notes from traditional keyboard sounds. You can actually assign different sounds, different samples to keys. And I think that was the thing. That was the hook. And from then on, I was still very interested in all the other things I had going on, like sports and academics. But there was a seed planted that day that told me that there was more possibility. There was more curiosity for me to follow. And I followed it. I followed it until I could save up enough money to buy a sequencer of my own. And after that, it was kind of just on. I was off into this whole journey.
Wow. How did you end up going to NYU School of Technology and Music?
NYU was a great transition coming from Barnard, because once I realized that I wanted to be a music producer, engineer, and that was all I was going to do and wanted to do, I started looking for courses at Columbia to take. And I took all the classes at the Columbia Computer Music Center, and those were really cool classes. But to be honest, there was a limit, there was a ceiling, and there was no graduate program at Columbia. So NYU was the next best thing. And so obviously there was the Clive Davis Institute. And I was like, how do I get into the Clive Davis Institute? They didn't have a graduate program at the time. So I went over to the Steinhardt School and applied there, because they had studios and they had the course of study that I knew I needed to get to the next level. So that's how NYU came into play. And I went direct from undergrad, graduating that spring, direct into grad work that fall.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So tell me a bit about what happened after that. Like, how did you end up in Atlantic Records? And also, I guess I'd like to hear a bit more about what you've been doing at Atlantic Records.
Yeah. I was looking to become a music producer. I was producing artists out of my home studio, which had just been collecting instruments and technology since college. And I was just producing, working, doing it. And I wasn't making a ton of money, but I had my clients. And I was working a job at a company that was a music production and DJ school based in New York. And I was looking for another opportunity, because I felt that even though I really enjoyed being in the educational side, it was amazing. I wanted to really keep my eye on my goal, which was to be a chart-topping producer. I wanted to make records that would go out into culture and society and have an impact on people. And so I was always looking for an inroad into that type of work. I didn't know that it was going to come in the form of getting hired at a label. That was not my ambition. I never worked any label internships in college, because the jobs that were typically available weren't jobs I was interested in. It were jobs in A&R and marketing and promotions. I wasn't interested in those things. I was more concerned with the creative. So I was very surprised when, sitting at my desk one day at my job, I saw this job pop up for an engineer at Atlantic Records. And, when that kind of thing happens, you just look at it twice and you go, Am I seeing the right thing? Like the exact job that I want in life at one of the greatest labels in the world. And sure enough, it was real. And so I applied. And you send your resume off into cyberspace and you hope for the best. Obviously, you have to do a little bit more than that. So I didn't know anybody at Atlantic. I didn't have any contacts in the music business on the label side. So I was really trying to figure out how to get an interview. I had a book that was a directory of music industry companies. So publishers, PROs, labels. It had names of all the top executives at all the labels. So no contact information, but the names. So I went in this book, I went to the label section, I found Atlantic Records, and I found their top 50 executives. And I found a way to use the syntax, what I felt like would be the most logical syntax for email addresses. And I tried one out, and it was a hit. And I didn't get a bounce back. So I sent my resume and my cover letter to all 50 executives.
This is amazing.
And I got one hit back, and he was the man. And today he's the general manager of Atlantic Records, Paul Sinclair. And he sent me one line back. I forwarded your resume on to the hiring manager. Good luck. And it worked out. So that's the story. A little bit of hustle and a little bit of internet savvy. And, you know, I've always felt like if I can get an interview, I can get the job. So I knew if I could just get them to meet me, you know, I'll get the job. And sure enough, that's what happened.
Wow,
so
that's
I was
such
very,
a cool story.
Very blessed, very fortunate. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure a lot of people can glean a lot of knowledge from that. So what are you doing over there in Atlanta? Because you kind of told me before we did this, before we started recording, that you came in kind of thinking you were going to be editing random audio bits, and then you ended up running a studio there. Tell me a bit about that.
Right. I think they were envisioning that the job would be mostly audio and editorial support, which was really cool because I came in editing radio drops for the promotions team, and I was recording podcasts and editing those podcasts. I was doing content sessions for the artists that would come in and needed to record acoustic content. So what that did was it allowed me to work with all the different departments and learn about the company. I got a chance to learn about all the artists, the hip hop, the R&B, the metal, rock, pop, country artists. I got an opportunity through working with all the different promotions departments on podcasts or what have you. I really got such an incredible education. One of my first assignments was working on this metal podcast for Roadrunner Records. And I worked on that with the VP of promotions. And they would bring in all these guests in this moment, and Devil Wears Prada and Skillet and all these incredible metal artists. And I get a chance to sit with them and listen to these interviews and learn so much about metal and edit the podcast and study some of the music. And so that was, Amity Affliction, all these incredible artists would be coming through. And then I would be doing radio drops for the R&B and hip hop side. So I'd have Wiz Khalifa coming in to do 300 radio drops for a new album he had coming out, and and having to edit that. So that was the beginning of everything. And on top of that, I also had to write editorial content. So I used that as an opportunity to write about the company and the history of the company. So I did all types of posts on Aretha Franklin and Miriam Abramson, who actually is one of the founders of Atlantic Records. She's an unsung financial wizard who kept Atlantic Records afloat. And she really managed the money and was a founding partner. I did an expose on her when she passed away. I did an expose on Tommy Dowd and Jerry Wexler and all of the executives. I used it as an opportunity to really study the company and learn about the history. And I also started an editorial piece on engineers, which gave me an opportunity to interview Ann Mancielli and Tony Maserati and Ted Jensen, all these incredible mastering engineers. That was my way of educating myself and learning about the industry, because I was fairly green about industry. I mean, I knew recording and production, and obviously I understood how to write, and I had an admin